a listen. Expect the Spanish Inquisition. It's head first only television.
Does this camera make my room look bigger? Good evening all. It's January the 28th. It's the last Thursday in January. It's head first only television time once again. And yeah, I got fed up with the claustrophobic nature of the rubbish webcam that I was using, and as a result, kind of splashed out on one that was almost twice as expensive as the 20 quid webcams that I've been using all the rest of the time. Atitlan says, it makes it look like we're HAL. Is that like 8mm or something? Oh, it's better than that, sir. It's a 1.6mm fisheye, and it's been heavily cropped. So the actual image that I'm getting from the camera is indeed the HAL circular fisheye image, but I've used OBS to zoom in a bit, and Array of Emotions says this one looks so much better in capitals, and I know, right? It does, doesn't it? This is so. The last camera that I had, basically, if I went like that, my hands would disappear because the field of view was about, well, on the box it said field of view 140 degrees. Nope. I think it would probably have struggled to reach the 100-degree field of view. But also the quality was really shy. Yeah, that was one of the other reasons why that webcam has now been retired. Because I noticed when I was editing the last couple of shows, it was like, ooh, colour correction's gone off. And then I realised it wasn't the colour correction, it was the camera was basically just being green. So it's like, oh dear. So this is really good. It looks really nice around the edges. Yeah, it's a bit with those two things there. These things, those are actually my monitors. That's how mad the field of view is on this one. So, yeah, I'm chuffed to bits with it. I'm glad you think it's an improvement on the last show. And it kind of shows off the studio, which is one of the reasons why I wanted a fisheye lens. It really shows the desk off, doesn't it? Thanks once again to Guy Mitson at Chunky Studio Furniture down in Banwell in Somerset, who put this together for me just after 5090 finished last year. So Form February album writing month starts on Monday, and this will be the first February album writing month that I do with the studio in this new setup, and I can't wait to see how things pan out. Sunday show will be the last Is It Form Yet show, because it will only be one day until Form starts when I do Sunday's Is It Form Yet show. After that point, then yes, not only will I not be doing the Is It Form Yet show, well, I could kind of do an Is It Form Yet show on Sunday the 7th and just go, yes. Yeah, the plan is I'm going to use February Album Writing Month, which is a songwriting challenge in which you write 14 songs or pieces of music in the 28 days of February. It's a challenge that I've taken part in every year since 2009, I think. I was rubbish for the first few years. I was a little less rubbish for a few years after that. And then about 5 years ago, I started not being rubbish. And I'm hoping that either this year or during 5090, which is Form's Big Brother, where you have to write 50 songs. Yes, you heard that right. 50 songs in the 90 days between July the 4th and October the 1st. And I've done that every year for the last 6-7 years. It really gives your songwriting chops a kick up the pants. You will get better at being a musician by taking part in February Album Writing Month. And part of the reason that I do these shows is I'm on a mission. I want you guys to start making music and enjoy making music and make music on a budget. Might be a really, really teeny, tiny budget, but there are still ways when you can really, really get a great sound for not very much money. And that's where I come in, because that's the kind of stuff that this show is about. To that end, on tonight's show, bunch of gear updates, but I have an album to share with you. Yes, Spontaneous Grand Pianos is finished. I've done it. 12 tracks, a total of 1 hour and 47 seconds of new music that I've recorded at this very desk over the last 28 days. So I will be sharing the last 2 tracks on the album with you later on. I've got a bunch of gear news, got a bunch of software news. But before we go any further, thank you very much to Rob, my latest subscriber, who subscribed with Primes just 6 hours ago and then rang me up to tell me, because hello, Rob. That was a lovely phone call as well. It's a long time since we managed to catch up. Hello also to Honey Badger folk, who are my latest followers on Twitch, who followed me a couple of days ago and also subscribed to my YouTube channel and are following me on Twitter. That's the way to do it. I'm Headfirst Only on Twitter. I'm Headfirst Only on YouTube. I'm Headfirst Only here. I'm Headfirst Only pretty much wherever you look for me. Including SoundCloud, if any of you still do the SoundCloud thing, and the spam and the endless emails and messages offering to sell you genuine followers hasn't driven you away completely. So, tonight's show, what have I got for you? Well, news-wise, I have just installed a honking big software update from Native Instruments. Yes, Contact 6.5.0 dropped yesterday, although I did notice on Native Instruments forum thread for new software releases that they got the date wrong and said it was the 27th of January 2020, which would actually be 8 months prior to when Contact 6.4 dropped, which was August last year. So main thing is that Contact is now compatible with Catalina if you're a macOS user. They've also ramped up the minimum OS version number for compatibility-wise, but there is a stonking big list of bug fixes, and they have finally, one hopes, touch wood, sorted out the UI scaling issues under Ableton with Windows. I'm hoping. I haven't tried it out yet. I only installed it about half an hour ago, and I was really glad, because I've managed to make Contact crash so spectacularly today that I didn't even get an error message. I just dropped a Contact instrument into Ableton, and Ableton just went poof and completely disappeared. Yeah, that seems to happen rather a lot since I started using Contact, but I'm sure version 6.5.0 will have fixed all my problems. What else has dropped today? I have just finished, literally about 10 minutes before the show started, just finished updating my Arturia V Collection 8. I ran my Arturia software updater and it said, you have 29 updates for you. which, considering I was going live here in about 30, 40 minutes, was a bit, oh yeah, go for it. And yeah, I did it very quickly. But there again, I have a decent internet connection here these days, which I hope means that the stream is coming through loud and clear wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in, and whatever operating system or method of connecting to the interwebs you are using. January's too early to have adjusted to a New Year number, says Atitlan regarding Native Instruments update. Yeah, and Revomotion says, that pause deserved a rim shot. Thank you, sir. You're so kind. You remember last week, Sunday show, we were talking about the amount of spam on the February Album Writing Month website, that a lot of accounts have been created over the years for search engine optimization purposes rather than for actually submitting pieces of music to the site. And I'll cover another point which I need to make about form in a moment. But I would like to clarify that it's not that I want to convey the impression that the site is being deluged with spammers. A lot of the spammers were basically fairly stealthy and just created a profile with a backlink to the site that they wanted to plug. And that was as far as that account ever got in using the site. But Tim and Helen and I have basically been working our way through all the accounts on the site to try and clear away some of those, because kind of broken window policy that used to be in New York, that if there's one on the site, then other viewers think, oh, well, I can do that too. And we kind of don't want to send that message. So, as of about tea time tonight, there are now 3,506 suspended accounts on the Form website. So between us, all us mods have suspended over 1,200 accounts in the last 10 days. And we hope that the Form experience will be better for you as a result of doing that. So keep your fingers crossed anyway. Right, the other point that I was going to make about Form, because a lot of people on the forums or just in the Facebook user group have been saying, well, how does it work? Because I can't see how it works. There's a reason for that. The reason is that the site has not been unlocked yet. So we can all get together and have a nice chat in the forums and everything else. But a lot of the functionality of the February Album Writing Month website, and that's fawm.org, and the org is very important. Trust me on this, kids. Do not go to the .com site. A lot of the functionality of the site doesn't go live until it's February. Well, until it's February somewhere in the world. So what that means is you won't be able to post songs on the site until it is actually February and February Album Writing Month gets underway. A lot of people get confused by that, but it's simply that the relevant buttons and options on your profile haven't been switched on yet, and they won't be switched on until February Album Writing Month goes live, and that's usually at noon Greenwich Mean Time. Don't ask why, but that's the way it goes. But that's not to say that you can't really pull the stops out and start writing your first song at midnight on February the 1st. Go for it. Knock yourselves out. Have a song ready to upload when the site goes live, and there is always a competition as to who can get the first song uploaded on the site and listed first in the listings of songs that you can listen to, and who gets the last song uploaded on the site. So if that's your kind of thing, knock yourselves out. Array of Emotion says, isn't that cheating? If it's February, you've got from midnight until the site opens to get your first song not only done, but polished up and mixed and mastered and everything else. So I consider that absolutely fair game, with the proviso that it has to be one of your songs and it has to be a freshly written song. I mean, nobody's checking up on you, but the whole point is to up your songwriting chops. And the best way of doing that is forcing yourself to create on a limited time scale and just sit down and do the work, because that's kind of how you get better. One final form shout out to Roddy, who left me some very, very nice messages on my soundboard, which is my message space under my profile on my form page, and you can see that at Head First Only at the form website. And Roddy took part in the Platinum Sync licensing forum that was a bit of a shambles that I talked about at the weekend. And he said, the follow-up events got less and less informative and harder sell, until at the end it was basically, you need to spend $3,000 with us and we'll make you rich. So I was kind of glad I bailed at that point. So thank you, Roddy, for reassuring me that I made a sensible decision on how to best use my time. How have I been using my time? I'm glad you asked. Shall we go over to the screen share? I've been busy. So here we are with my DAW, my digital audio workstation of choice. And, I'm very, very small in that picture-in-picture window. Shall we go to a different window? So, hello, shelf cam. That's a bit washed out as well. I think we'll just leave it. We'll just leave it with this. I'll put together a better picture-in-picture view next time. But so yes, here we go. Making music with Ableton Live 10, and hopefully before too much longer it will be making music with Ableton Live 11. And so album. I've been writing an album about every month for the last 3 months in an effort to learn all the bits and pieces that I've acquired with my studio upgrade, with, a brand new MIDI controller keyboard, with a whole bunch of software, with finally taking the plunge into the Native Instruments software ecosystem and getting myself a copy of Complete, which has Contact, the sampler on it, and shed loads of virtual instruments, and effects processors. Hundreds of them, to the point where it's like, what do I do? I can't decide. So I limited myself each month to just a handful of instruments from this massive collection of stuff. And each month I take a deep dive into 1 or 2 instruments. So, for example, last month I brought out an album which was just over an hour's worth of music that was made with a bunch of Contact Play series instruments. And in fact, just for nostalgia's sake, I went back to it. And I've been using Hybrid Keys today. So Hybrid Keys is kind of nice, rather sort of piano-y type blend of 2 samples. And if I enable that track and play you some notes. That's rather lovely, isn't it? I do like Hybrid Keys, and shout out to Helen's evil twin from Form, who was also enthusing about Hybrid Keys this week when we were chatting on Slack. In fact, of the two instruments, the other instrument that I used in Decembering, which was last month's album, was Ethereal Earth. And to be honest, the usability of the two instruments is very asymmetric. I think Hybrid Keys is usable in a much more wide range of contexts than Ethereal Earth is. So for each of these albums, I pick a whole bunch of instruments. This month, I have been all about the pianos. So each track on this month's album will have one of the Native Instruments grand pianos, or possibly an upright piano, or possibly Arturia's V Collection piano version 2. So it's all about grand pianos, and there is a reason for that, and the reason is long and convoluted, but hey, I'm launching the album, this is my show, so I'm going to tell you. So I watch a bunch of science shows online. I'm a Patreon supporter of the Cosmic Shambles Network. If you don't know about the Cosmic Shambles Network, it's run by Trunkman Productions. It features input from such luminaries as Robin Ince and Professor Brian Cox and Josie Long, and a whole slew of brilliant science communicators like Dean Burnett, author of The Happy Brain and The Idiot Brain, like Helen Chersky, whose book Storm in a Teacup is one of the best popular science books you will ever lay your hands on. They do some lovely shows, and they did a show just before Christmas, if I remember correctly. It was from the basement of King's Place, and they streamed the whole thing online, and it went on for about 26 hours. And Robin Ince, bless him, was the presenter for the entire show. So just for moral support, and I also contributed, I donated to the charities that they were supporting, which included Mind and Médecins Sans Frontières. He was up and running and compos mentis for the entire show. He did hit the wall a bit at the 8 a.m. stage, but by then I was pretty much, running on coffee. But at one point they were talking about deep time and the way that entropy in our universe, the universe somehow started off in an extremely low entropy, in other words, highly ordered state, and has been progressively increasing in entropy ever since. Entropy is just like chaos, it's disorder. And we are walking contradictions to the second law of thermodynamics, which says that systems only ever become more and more disordered. In other words, you can't unstir the milk out of your coffee. You can't unbreak the egg when you're making an omelette. But the thing is that the way that atoms arrange and bump into each other, and in some cases, and Google the Casimir effect if you want to know what this is, and it is a real thing, little particles will spontaneously pop into existence and then pop out of existence again, all the time, in the universe, wherever you are, all over the place. And somebody said, well, virtual particle pairs popping into existence, that's kind of fairly dull and expected. So don't know if you've ever come across the philosophical and cosmological concept of the Boltzmann brain, which is the idea that if you've got an almost infinite amount of time, then atoms bumping into each other will, over time, because it's not impossible, spontaneously form every structure that has ever existed, including a functioning human brain, which would possibly, in fact, not just a functioning human brain, but every possible functioning human brain that has does or will ever exist. And that's a big problem in cosmology, because cosmologists then go, well, if that's more probable than us actually being real brains, then we're probably Boltzmann brains, which is either a signal that your theory is a bit pants, because a brain floating in space is probably not going to be a functioning brain for very long, and we seem to have a continuity of existence, although philosophers are not even sure that that's a thing. So cosmologists lose sleep over this sort of stuff. But rather than a functioning human brain, one of the guys that Robin was talking to said, well, you could have a spontaneous grand piano. At which point Muggins here went, oh, that's got to be the title of my next album, which is why all of these tracks feature a spontaneous or otherwise grand piano. It is such a lovely idea. I thought I had to do it justice. So 12 tracks, all about the physical terms and ideas and concepts that are involved in that idea of cosmologists getting to the point where they think, ooh, spontaneous grand piano. So, deep time. We're not just talking about, the end of the sun or even the sun going out. I'm talking about deep time to the point where every star in the universe has run out of fuel. I'm talking about deep time to the extent where every black hole in the universe, even the supermassive black holes at the center of galaxies, run out of things they can eat. And once they've run out of things that they can eat, they start shrinking. They start evaporating through a process called Hawking radiation. And yes, that's Hawking as in Professor Sir Stephen Hawking. So eventually even black holes just evaporate, and all that you're left with is a sea of photons of infrared radiation, and infrared radiation is heat, and that is the heat death of the end of the universe. Now, we're not exactly sure that that's the way the universe is going to end up, because there are things like the cosmological constant and alpha, the scale factor of the universe, may actually mean that the universe expands and expands faster and faster and faster until even individual atoms get ripped apart by the increasing scale of the universe. And that lovely, heartwarming concept is known as the Big Rip. Ryako Music says, hey, Squirrel, what does Muggins mean? Muggins is a sort of very, very quaint English expression that dates back, God, at least a century, which is usually somebody who's a bit gullible and a bit slow on the uptake. So, but yeah, so to get back, so you've got the Big Rip, you've got the heat death. There are various other things like the fact that dark energy might actually reverse and start squishing the universe back together again for a big crunch. And you might just spontaneously get another Big Bang, because if atoms can come together to create a spontaneous grand piano, they could also possibly come together to create the initial conditions of the Big Bang. It's not improbable because it's already happened once. So it could be that our universe spawns a new universe at some distant phase in the future. But anyway, reason I'm blathering on about all this is because this track is named after what happens to stars after they run out of fuel and go dark. And in some cases, if they don't go bang and turn into neutron stars or black holes, if they're not big enough for that, then what can happen is that they turn into a white dwarf, and the white dwarf gets colder and colder and colder and colder, and eventually fusion stops and it can no longer sustain. So it just then becomes a stellar mass of atoms. And the idea is that through a bunch of different physical processes, including quantum tunneling, all those atoms will eventually end up as iron 56, which basically means that you end up with an iron star. And strangely enough, that's the name of this track. So this is track number 11 from Spontaneous Grand Pianos. I got there eventually. We've only been going for 18 minutes. This is called Iron Star. So there you have it. Minus 13.4 LUFS for that mix. To be honest, I can live with that. It's up and down, and some of it's quiet and some of it's not. Some very nice comments. Thank you for everyone who said very, very nice things about that mix. Atitlan says, spacious mix draws your ear into all the little sound effects. Yeah, and all those little sound effects, something I've never really sat down and said, right, I need to do the little lifts and the little embellishments that transition from one phase to another. Check Mel's stream out, check Ryako Music stream out, because she is a master of the drop and the lift and the riser and everything else. And I've been basically cribbing from her copybook. So there are a whole bunch of little tiny things that I drop in the background of the mix to try and make it move along a bit more. Ryako Music says, glad I could actually teach you something. Mate, I learn something every week, every time I watch your show, because you do stuff. And I think, oh, God, that's all right, I'm stealing that. And I do. I'll be quite open about it. There are things that I have done making this album that I have learnt from Ryako Music, that I have learnt from Mel. And yeah, I'll totally admit to that. I rather like that. And it has that sort of, as was said in the comments, it has a sort of lonely feel to it, because basically the universe at the end of time, well, not the end of time, because time is theoretically infinite, but you're talking like 10 million billion years, which is about how long it will take an iron star to form. And yes, for the nerds amongst you, if you're wondering how much that is in exponential notation, that's an iron star, they reckon, will probably take around 1.6 times 10 to the 34 years to form, which is quite a lot. So iron stars are not a thing that one will encounter in the immediate future, even if we could travel our galaxy. So yeah, aiming for a kind of lonely, isolated, slightly somber, but at the same time, it's physics. It's awesome. So I wanted the two sort of awesomeness and somberness to be balanced. And I kind of think I got there with that one, to be honest. So I really like that one. Right. Quick break. Back to me. Back to another equipment update. Various people showing their love of Native Instruments Contact sampler in the chat. If you have Contact, have you got your Yanks in download yet? Because you need to grab it now, because it's only gonna be free until January the 31st. I raved about it on the show a while ago, and I will continue to rave about it. It is rather lovely. So if you haven't got it, go over to Native Instruments. I mean, to be honest, even if you don't have a full version of Contact, grab it now, just in case you come into a bit more money than you have at the moment and manage to afford the full version of it, which is kind of what happened to me last year when I suddenly discovered that one of my retirement funds kicked in on my birthday, which is why I'm now quite chilled about the fact that I haven't got a job and that my only stream of income really is doing this. So, and a pension payment every end of the month. And I can survive on that, but it would be nice to be able to splash out on even more bits of kit than I've surrounded myself in the 40 years that I've been working on this sort of stuff. Clicking on the little like button would be a big help. I've got over 50 subscribers on YouTube now, which is rather excellent. It's only taken me 9 years to amass that following, but hey, such is life. So yes, snag your copy of Yangtze. That was Iron Star. That was the penultimate track on my album Spontaneous Grand Pianos. And I've been waffling an awful lot this evening. I really have. And I've had way too much caffeine. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my next piece of music, which is the final piece of music from Spontaneous Grand Pianos. And I kind of wanted to go out on a high. I'll kind of talk about it in more detail at the end, but one thing that I want to say about writing stuff, about putting your own music together, is that if you take it into your head that you've got limitations, that you are not capable of doing something, it tends to stop you having a go. Whereas, and this is one of the reasons why I like Form so much, February Album Writing Month so much, is because with February Album Writing Month, you've got to write 14 songs in 28 days. You can't sort of go a bit dithery about, well, am I going to do this or not? Can I do this? Am I capable? Have I got the chops for this? The thing with Form is that you don't spend time worrying about that. You just go on and have a go. And you will surprise yourself. So, for instance, on this track, as always, Spontaneous Grand Pianos. So it's all about the pianos. What did I use this time? I can't remember, so I'm going to open it up. Oh, there you go. I used the Arturia V Collection Japanese grand piano, which is a bit brighter than the Contact instruments. Rather like it. You get huge controls because it's basically modelled. It's not a real instrument. So you can move the mics round. You can do weird things with how much overtones that you get from one string to the next. You can do a whole bunch of stuff. And I tweaked it until I got a really, really nice piano sound. And I wanted something that was a bit more upbeat and everything else. And then for some ridiculous Riaka Music says that's how I got through Metropolis, head first only. There is a reason the site and my website and my skiing club and this site and all my internet IDs are called head first only, because it is all about just plunging in head first and going for it, not sitting in the chalet drinking gin and tonics, actually throwing yourself down a ski slope head first only. That's where this name came from, and that I came up with some friends in about 1986, and it's been a part of my life ever since, and it's been a philosophy of my life ever since. And to that end, when I came up with the piano line for this track, which as a sort of finale I've just called The Infinite Universe, or that kind of doesn't do it justice, really. It was more The Infinite Universe. That's much more this track style. Came out with a nice piano line, and it's quite upbeat and everything. And for some reason, I then thought, I wonder if I could play that on the bass at the same time. And by bass, I don't just mean any bass. I mean this thing. This is an Ibanez RG9BK. They don't make them anymore. And yes, that neck is about the width and the thickness of a cricket bat. It's a 9-string guitar. Top 6 strings are exactly the same as an electric guitar, but the bottom 3 are C sharp, F sharp, and B. So it goes lower by quite a bit than your average bass guitar. I bought it because I harboured aspirations of doing gent style heavy metal. In the end, it's turned out to be a better bass guitar for me and the way I play than the JD Rhodey there and the Ibanez Blazer fretless bass back next to the Marshall stack. And so I'm going to let the RG9/BK do the talking for me. So we'll go back over to Ableton, which is now loaded up the Infinite Multiverse. In fact, it's even loaded up the Infinite Multiverse. And I'm just going to play at you and marvel at my bass playing chops. So that was the closing track from Spontaneous Grand Pianos called The Infinite Multiverse. And I was saying on the chat, I really surprised myself with those last two tracks. I've done stuff just this week. I mean, Iron Star I finished yesterday. The Infinite Multiverse I finished this morning. I pushed myself. I said, I don't care whether I can do it or not. I'm just going to have a go. And in the end, it turned out that actually I could do it after all. I have learnt a hell of a lot from each of these deep dive albums, focusing on specific instruments. And I've not just learnt stuff about the instruments that I've been focusing on. For instance, on this album, I found, because in terms of the processing, I'll call it up. So the piano, it's running complete control, because I'm using a Native Instruments MIDI controller. It's a complete control S88 Mark II, which I bought myself for Christmas. That was my Christmas present, and I love it to bits. And complete control basically acts as a wrapper around a lot of the ecosystem of instruments that I've bought over the years, including Arturia's V Collection, which is why this one actually uses the Arturia V Collection piano in it. But then I'm a great fan of Isotope's mixing and mastering products. So for individual tracks or submixes, which is what I tend to use them on, because I group things into submixes, and sad git that I am, yes, they're all color coded. So the synths are the blue tracks, the piano is the fluorescent pink one, the bass guitar's the brown track, and the guitars, or in this track there's just a guitar, is all the autumny oranges and reds. And the signal processing on the guitar, it's my Moore Ocean machine. I now have a working Moore Ocean machine, which is a double echo and reverb unit. Back in my guitar effects chain, I have missed having one so much, and I decided I was going to go for it with the guitar solo. So again, talking about going for it, I recorded a solo and thought, no, it's too slow. So I recorded it again and thought, no, I don't like it. I recorded it again and thought, I can do better than this. So I kept on pushing myself and going, no, that's not good enough. Do it again. And I think, well, in fact, that says audio 15. So that is actually the 15th attempt that I made at the guitar solo before I was satisfied with what I'd done on it. And I was quite pleased with that solo. I was very pleased with the bass guitar playing. I managed to duplicate what I'd done on the piano. And in terms of smoothing the bass guitar out a bit, have to really give an endorsement to this little beauty, which is the Waves Bass Rider plugin, because it listens to your track and it tames it. It's the equivalent of riding the faders on an audio track, on a vocal track. There is a vocal rider version of this, but the bass rider really worked wonders with variations in loudness of my playing, and just generally making me sound better. And after all, that's kind of what you want out of a plugin. So that's the Waves Bass Rider plugin, and it does it live. There's no discernible latency in it as well. And when I started using it, I would just get hypnotized by what the plugin user interface does, because if I play it while the bass is going, you'll see why. that cool? I thought it was cool, but I'm a sad git, and it's things like that amuse me no end. So yes, Waves Bass Rider was taming my eccentricities of playing, but that is just me on the guitar, on the Ibanez 9-string, playing the bass. As always with this, kind of all the way through their album, there are particular sounds that I sort of latched and glommed onto that I've always loved from, growing up as a teenager, listening to prog rock in the 1970s, because yes, I'm an old git. People like Tangerine Dream, or Yes, or Genesis, or Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And when I was 11 years old, the first LP I ever bought was Emerson, Lake and Palmer's Pictures at an Exhibition, which probably explains quite a lot about why I listen to the sort of music that I listen to, and why I play the sort of music that I play. But one of the things that I absolutely adore, and I have actually been very fortunate to go round the factory where they still make real ones of these, is the Melotron. It's a machine that basically you press a key that engages a tape loop onto a tape head, and for each note on a Melotron there is a loop of tape that plays that note with a piano or a set of flutes or a set of violins or a set of, who names it, vocal choirs. Which means that on a real Melotron, you don't just go, oh, I'll use a different preset for this and just push a button. Oh no, you have to take out the entire tape cartridge and put a new one in that has the sounds of the instrument that you wanted to play. That's how mad the engineering. Not only that, but the width of the tape that is used in tape loops on a Melotron is not an industry standard. It is not manufactured for the Melotron factory. So what they do is they have a special machine that they built themselves that takes 1-inch tape and cuts it lengthwise into strips so that they can then splice it together and put it in and record the samples, for want of a better word, onto the tapes. And somewhere downstairs I actually have a little piece of tape that I took away with me from the Melotron factory. So yeah, that was a glorious day, and many thanks to my friend Norm for arranging that trip for me. I nerded out to no end. But on this particular track, I'm showing me Tangerine Dream roots here because the track is actually an Edgar Froese sample from the Tangerine Dream album Rubicon. So it's this piano put through all sorts of nice flangery, chorusy stuff. And it might also remind you slightly of the piano in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which was also a Melotron. So there you go. So that's the Infinite Multiverse. What else did I learn from doing it? Well, I'm really sold now on the idea of just doing deep dives into one or two instruments and spending an entire album just getting to know what one or two instruments actually do, and going beyond just dialing through all the presets until you find one that you like and then just using that. I mean, look at this room. I mean, this stuff behind me, those synths, the JX doesn't have any of its original sounds on it. In fact, I think the Juno 60 doesn't either. And the Juno 106 probably hasn't, although, yeah, that tended to be the poor relation in there because I love the Juno. And the JX3P was the first polysynth that I ever bought. So my background is fiddling with knobs and dials, and I totally get that I can do that, especially with the Arturia V collection, but also with some of the instruments in Contact. And there are modifiers on all of the Contact grand pianos. All right, we've got an Arturia grand piano in this one, but the Contact ones let you change the EQ, let you change the size of the room that the piano is in, all sorts of lovely things you can do. And I think that in fiddling like that, I got better sounds out of those instruments than I would if I'd just gone, oh yeah, I'll have that preset. Because that's not how I roll. So yeah, I will not be doing, I have to say, I will not be doing a deep dive album. And I'm calling these albums now, for want of a better term, the learning project. So that's kind of my imprint of all of these albums. I'm going to continue doing them. I won't do one during February because it's February album writing month, and I will be sending myself mad doing February album writing month. But when March comes around, I will be back at it, picking another selection of instruments, coming up with another bizarre concept that I can hang a whole bunch of song titles off, and seeing where it leads me. I had no idea of the sort of music that I was going to make when I started making this album at the beginning of the month. And I really, really enjoy the challenge of just sitting down and going, right, I'm going to use that and I'm going to use that, and let's see where it takes me. And yeah, this month it took me into the far reaches of deep time and the end of our universe. Or possibly not, because if you read the sleeve notes on the album that I will be launching in a couple of seconds on Bandcamp, you will see that possibly other things could happen. Anyway, enough of that. It's time, ladies and gentlemen, to reveal the cover of Spontaneous Grand Pianos. And here it is. I'll get out of the way so you can marvel in it. So this is the album. This is the artwork. As always, Volkswagen Audi Group Rounded Bold is the font that I have used since I started doing these, because Peter Gabriel fans will probably recognise that that's the font that Peter Gabriel used on all his first 4 albums. Riaka Music says, that looks cool. I don't think that any of you would ever figure out what that is in a million years. That's actually sunlight shining through the Venetian blind in my bedroom. Well, small images of the sun that were being shone up on my bedroom ceiling from early morning sun. And it was such a regular series of dots that I thought, oh, that's cool. I've got to take a photograph of that. So I grabbed my phone and took a photograph of it, and then threw a whole bunch of filters in the GNU image manipulation program, otherwise known as the GIMP. So yes, that has been thoroughly sorted to by the GIMP. And that is the cover of Spontaneous Grand Pianos. So with that, let's slide on over to Bandcamp, which is where I keep all my albums, although you will also find some of my albums on Spotify and Apple Music and Tidal and whatever other music streaming services are available. But these days I put everything on Bandcamp that I release. So there you go, 12 tracks, 1 hour and 50 seconds of music. And it's published. There you go. Spontaneous Grand Pianos by Digital Album. Name your price. And I am totally fine with you naming a price of 0. That's kind of not why I'm doing these things. I love doing these. I love sharing the music. I love sharing how I made the music here on Twitch. So if you want to just grab a download, I've got over 1,000 free downloads left this month. So avail yourself of a copy and give it a listen from start to finish. Headphones probably going to be pretty good for this stuff, even though it's all mixed on monitors. I always listen to my stuff through on headphones after I've mastered a track and think, bass could be louder. Yeah, don't like that. And tweak it obsessively, which is why some of these mixes are probably about version 7 or 8. But I had fun doing it. The sleeve notes I wrote today, and they are extensive and I hope entertaining, and will give you a bit of insight into what the hell I was thinking about doing these things in the first place. And I will also point out that I have an extensive discography of other albums which is available on Bandcamp. Here they all are. Those are not all albums, but quite a few of them are. And they're all available for you to stream, listen to, and everything else. Anyway, that's it. Album's launched. Album's launched. Hooray! La! Brilliant. Thank you for being a part of my musical journey this month. One of the last things that I want to talk about tonight, and I called it up when we were playing through that track, was I've really started getting into using Insight 2 to help me judge whether what I'm producing is too loud or not loud enough, and whether it will fit in with streaming services. And I talked on Sunday's show and we talked about compressors, and that show is now up and available to watch on YouTube, and it's the full waffly version is still on Twitch and will be on Twitch for the next 58 days or 56 days, I guess it'll be now. I really started noticing that my ears are better at picking up stuff than I had previously given them credit for, which is it's a source of considerable amazement to me, because I'm a heavy metal kid. I grew up listening to, Black Sabbath and Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, and started going to gigs in my late teens, and I saw Motorhead supported by Saxon on the Bomber tour at the Hammersmith Odeon in 1979. And my ears rang for 6 days afterwards. So I am astonished I have got any hearing left. But I think after that gig, I started wearing earplugs at concerts. And I think that's probably done an awful lot to save my hearing, because I know an awful lot of musicians from my era and the era before me who now really suffer from tinnitus, and in a lot of cases are just deaf. And yet, he said, I have been mastering these tracks and sitting down and listening to them and thinking, that piano's distorting. Really, really don't like the way that piano's sounding. And in each case, I'd go into it and I use, and as I called it up just now, so let's go back to screen share again, because we're going left, right, centre here. I use Isotopes Neutron on submixes or pianos, and it is very, very tempting to just click on the mix assistant and let Isotope do its thing and impose what it thinks is the processing chain that audio signal requires. And what I found in the course of this month is that Neutron really, really likes dropping something in that's called an exciter that kind of adds what is supposed to be subtle distortion in one of 4 flavors, either tape or tube or warmth or retro, to a signal. And you can split it up like that and have one set for one bunch of frequencies and one bunch for another set of frequencies. And in fact, I mean, you can really knock yourself out and set up 3 different frequency spectrum chunks of bandwidth, and it will impose different processing on each case. And in each case, when I've used it with pianos, I've gone, why is that piano suddenly sounding horrible? And it didn't matter how much I tweaked the processing or anything here. The only way that I found that really improved the quality of the signal of the piano was to delete the exciter. And suddenly it was like, oh God, that sounds better. So I would not have believed that my ears were capable of picking up something like that, but apparently they are. So that was a huge learning thing for me. So in terms of learning from, after all, this is part of the learning project, it's both my ears are capable of doing more than I was giving them credit for. My instrument playing, you should always give yourself more credit than you are currently doing for what you are capable of doing. And as Mel said, the way to do it is just plunge in headfirst only. Just do it, regardless of whether you think you're capable of it enough. I mean, you might fail the first time, but don't give up at the first attempt. Do it again. And if it doesn't work again, do it again. And as we saw with that guitar solo, in some cases, it might take you 15 goes to get to the guitar solo that you'd got in your head that was kind of the idea that you wanted in the first place. But I got there, which means that you can get there too. And yeah, focus on a limiting selection of instruments really, really helps your creative decisions, because you can make them faster, because you are not paralyzed with a massive selection of instruments or things to choose from. I have to go. Yeah, same to you, sir. And good night and peace. Have a good one, mate. I really like the idea of avoiding the paradox of choice by saying, well, I'm just going to choose this. And yeah, I can, if something appeals and I suddenly think, oh, I might use that synth to drop in the background, which, I mean, in this case, there's my go-to lovely favourite, the free Yamaha DX7 clone, as used by Brian Eno, who is one of the DX7's biggest advocates, DXZ. And yes, I'm back to my Ond Martineau clone sound, which is preset number 17 if you download DXZ. It's called TRW. This is what it sounds like. Had to use that somewhere. I grew up as a kid watching the puppet shows of Jerry Anderson, and Jerry Anderson had one of the best film composers in the business writing the music for himself, and that was a chap by the name of Barry Gray. And Barry Gray was an Ond Martineau owner, and he used it to great effect in soundtrack work for, well, particularly Captain Scarlet. You know, Portishead's track Mysterons? Just watch a couple of episodes of Captain Scarlet and you'll see exactly where they got that vibe from. And that vibe is almost entirely Barry Gray performing on his own Ond Martineau. And to clear up a misconception, I have to say, and I know this for a fact, there is no theremin on Portishead's track Mysterons at all. It's all a Roland SH-101, which was basically the entry model synthesizer that Roland made in the 1980s. It was made out of grey plastic. You could buy an additional hand controller that had like a pitch bend wheel on it and a guitar strap, so you could play it round your neck like a guitar. And the theremin /On Martineau sound in Mr. On's is actually a Roland SH101. So there you go. You learn something every day. But with that, it's what? 90 minutes into the show-ish, more or less. Yeah, almost exactly. And I'm... Atitlan says, along with the TB303, that synth got a new lease of life during race. Oh, didn't it just? And everybody needs a 303. But I worked in bands with guys who'd got the 303 and the 60, was it the 606 and the 808? All glorious bits of kit. We had, or I performed live in a band that had a real drummer and 2 Roland drum machines, all going simultaneously. It was mayhem. It sounded great. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of retro synths. So I'm thinking that, strangely enough, the Contact Retro Synths plugins might be a suitable subject for March's Learning Project album. But we shall see. Other than that, I've pretty much come to the end of the show. So I will bid you a good night. Thank you very much for staying with me for the last 90 minutes or so. There is one thing I will say. If you are, and it will be very lovely of you if you do decide that you actually want to spend money on spontaneous grand pianos rather than just downloading it, and I'm totally cool with you just downloading it, let that not be a misconception. But if you are contemplating actually spending real money for spontaneous grand pianos, please do me a big solid and wait until a week tomorrow, because Bandcamp Friday is back. Friday, February the 5th, Bandcamp are waiving their revenue share on all their sales once again from 8 a.m. GMT until 8 a.m. GMT on Saturday, February the 6th. And if you buy stuff on Bandcamp during that time period, then people will get more money from Bandcamp for those sales. Sadly, PayPal still take their cut, which I find a bit sort of churlish, but that's just me. So, other than that, if you want to buy the album, or if you want to get the album right now, go over to Bandcamp at headfirstonly.bandcamp.com. It's ready and waiting for you. There's some fun liner notes in there as well. And I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I have done making it and sharing the making of it here on Twitch. I will be back on Sunday night at 2100 Greenwich Mean Time, 2100 Universal Coordinated Time, with the final, or maybe not the final, but certainly the final Is It Form Yet show before it actually is form, which is a week. No, it's not a week on Monday. It is Monday, isn't it? Oh my God, I need to start panicking. I need to write 14 songs in 28 days. How am I going to do that? Says the man who has released an hour-long album of material every month for the last 3 months. Yeah. But if I can do it, you can do it too. I hope you will share that journey with me as much as you've shared this journey with me, because that's another album in the discography, done and dusted, released. And I think I am going to celebrate that fact with a beer. So I will wish you a very good night, whatever you're doing this week. Stay sane, stay safe, stay well, stay Wayne. And wear a damn mask if you're going outside. As I said last time, I will continue to say, because it's still relevant, the new B117 version of COVID-19 is approximately 30% more lethal than the strains that went before it. It is also between 40 and 80% more efficient at being propagated through particles that are created when people breathe out or sneeze or cough. And the best way of stopping those particles from getting into the atmosphere is to wear a damn mask. So if you're going outside, if you're close to other people, wear a damn mask. But other than that, have a great rest of the week. It's Friday tomorrow. It's nearly the weekend. I hope you're able to kick back and enjoy the weekend. I certainly will be after I've finished this album. So with that, this is HFO signing off from Twitch Livestream number 37. How on earth did the numbers get that big? But yes, this is Twitch Livestream number 37. I'll be back next Thursday with Twitch Livestream number 38. And until then, look after yourselves.